What's up, guys? This is Leslie here from Supraletics, and today I thought about talking about something that we don't often talk about in health blogs or health books, and that something is light. Now, everybody is scared to death about skin cancer, and this is the first thing that everybody learns. You need to smear yourself with sunscreen in order to avoid getting burned by the sunlight. But that's as far as our thinking about light usually goes. We don't really consider light as a component in good health, like we talk about clear water, or we would think about clean air, or we would talk about food, obviously, and exercise. But light actually is a hugely impactful environmental factor that you should think about if you want to be really healthy. And I can tell you a little story from my military times when I was doing this type of night exercises where we would have heavy things to carry and you would be marching throughout the night. What you would experience many times is that by morning time in the darkness you would feel exhausted and you would feel like, I can't take it anymore, I need to stop now. But then suddenly, as the sun would rise behind the horizon and the first sun rays would hit your eyes and start to warm up your face, you would just come alive and you just feel vitalized by that. A completely second fuel tank would be exposed to you all of a sudden. And there are a few things in my life that have given me that type of experience. I remember drinking coffee, for example, for the first times was a thing like that would give me this feeling, wow, I feel so boosted. So if we have something that's so powerful, it has the power to really lift you and stimulate you, then why don't we talk more about it? Everybody's obsessed about coffee. Why aren't we obsessed about light? Now, what is it that makes light so powerful? Well, it's because light, when it touches your skin, it causes certain hormonal reactions in your body that are very powerful. For example, vitamin D, which is actually not a vitamin, it's a hormone. Vitamin D production gets kicked in and gets activated by exposure to sunlight. That is one of the main benefits, I think, there is to getting sunlight, because vitamin D is if not the most powerful immune system related hormone or vitamin in your body, but it is up there. It's really one of the most important. It protects you from inflammation and infections and whatnot. So sunlight is really, really important for hormonal reasons. Sun also, or light overall, it can make you also very sick. This is something we know. If you are exposed to blue light late in the evening, it reduces your ability to secrete melatonin, which is really important for sleep. For example, if you are exposed to fluorescent lights in an office environment, which is very common, that can make you feel very unhappy, very depressed and tired and unfocused. So different types of light certainly have different types of effect on your health and your mood and whatnot. So how do I approach sun? Well, as soon as there's a little bit of sunlight outside, I tend to go out and try to enjoy it. It doesn't happen that much up here in the north, so I try to take my chances. But what about things like how long should you be in the sun and should you wear sunscreen or not? Well, wearing sunscreen is a scientific fact that it does prevent your skin from burning. That's undisputable. But my thinking about sunscreen is a bit more complicated, because I tend to think that there's two different types of wavelengths of light. There's UVA and UVB. UVB is the wavelength of light or is the radiation of light that has a very short wavelength, and it can only penetrate the top layer of your skin. And so UVB is the type of light that burns the top of your skin, but UVA has a long wavelength, and because it has a long wavelength, it can penetrate deep into your body's tissue. And sunscreen tends to only block out UVB, and it does very little to block UVA. So my thinking is that if you use sunscreen, it just allows you to be longer in the sun without visibly being burnt by the sun, but as a result, the UVA might have burned your deeper tissues instead. So I see it as something that in theory would be really useful, potentially, but it can be quite harmful actually if you let yourself burn from the inside. So my approach is that I go to sun often, but I stay in the sun only until, or quite shortly. I stay maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, in order to avoid being burned, because burning is really harmful. But as long as you don't burn, it's perfectly fine to be in sunlight. It's perfectly okay. There are some factors that do affect, though, how long you can be out in the sun. The tone of your skin is the most important thing. If you are dark-skinned, you can be probably hours in the sunlight without burning, especially up here in the north. You would never get enough sun exposure to burn. If you're very blonde, like an Irish white skin type, then you will burn very quickly. So the difference can really be between 5 minutes of sun exposure and 5 hours. And the other factors are, for example, air pollution. If there's a lot of microparticles and clouds and whatever smog in the air, that actually does pick up a lot of the UV radiation, and it reduces your burning risk. And food intake actually does also make a difference. Like people who, for example, eat tomatoes have better natural sun protection against the burning from the sun. So I would, if I was using sunscreen, I would eat tomatoes instead. That's a much better option. And finally, some things about the vitamin D production and sunlight. By age, the older you get, the less vitamin D your body is able to make, because the compounds that react with sunlight in order to produce vitamin D, they get fewer when you're older. So if you are old, I would recommend that you look into supplementing with vitamin D even more than you would normally do. For that very reason, that it's very difficult for you to get the necessary vitamin D through light exposure. And so those are my thoughts on light for today. It's not going to be a very conclusive video, but the two things that I want to depart you with is that first, start thinking about light. It just doesn't penetrate the consciousness of most people. They just take it as a granted and don't give it a second thought how much light they get, but it does have a huge impact on your mood, health, and immune system. And the second thing that I wanted to give you is that my personal approach to sunlight is that I don't use sunscreen. I eat healthy, antioxidant-rich foods that protect me to a somewhat degree. And then when I am in the sun, I don't stay long, so that I don't burn, I don't turn pink, basically, in the time that I spent in the sun. But I do get the full benefit of the sunlight, and I skip rather the nasty sunscreen lotions that I really don't like wearing. They just don't feel good. Cool. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it and you think there was some sense to it, click below and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in future videos.